Hi, my name is Kasle, and if you are watching this video, it means that you have either already signed up to do an astrology reading for me, or you're interested in signing up to do an astrology reading with me. And in this video, I'm going to be walking you through some of the basics of what we're going to look at in your session so that when we get to your session, we can dive right in and I can spend more time on your chart and less time explaining what all of this stuff is. So let me show you what we're going to be looking at when we do a session. If you signed up to do an Astrology Soul Blueprint session, if we're doing like a planetary return session, this is what your birth chart looks like. So this is my birth chart, and I'm going to use my information for the purpose of this session. And remember, astrology is a language, it is a science, it's an art form, and it is a system of keeping time and cycles of time. So what you're looking at right now is a snapshot of the sky the moment that you were born. This is exactly where all the planets and the stars were the second that you came out of the womb. So if you are thinking about getting a reading, then we do need your exact time. So you either need to go pull out your birth certificate, or it's a really good excuse to call mom and find out what time you were born. So I like to explain an astrology chart like a sentence. So first we have what you have all probably heard of are the zodiac signs around the outside. The zodiac signs are the adjectives. They describe the personality of a person. So that's the very first thing, the adjectives. Then on the inside, you see this 1 through 12 here. These are called the houses, and the houses are the nouns. They describe what we could call the hero's journey of the time that you were born and come into the world, and they describe your different areas of life. So number 1 is the self and the ego. House 2 is our money, our values, our standards. Like once we know who we are, then we have to figure out what we believe in. 3 is the mind, communication. 4 is family, is our home, our physical home, how we feel nurtured. 5 is our creativity, our love. It's the house of the king. 6 is our health. It rules pets. 7 rules relationships. Especially one-on-one partnerships. This isn't so much love. 5 is really the house of what I love. 7 is the actual partnership. 8 is then the intimacy between the relationships. It rules sex. It rules merging of finances in a life. Then, so you've seen, we've like gone through the early stages of life. You've set up your foundation as a human being. And once you set up your personal life, then you start to get to how you relate to the outside world. So you've formed some partnerships. Now you get to go explore. House 9 rules exploration, travel, higher education, like going and getting a university degree, being a teacher. 10 rules career, money, long-term success. 11 rules groups of people, how we relate to groups of people. And house 12 rules our spiritual beliefs. And once we have figured out who we are as a person, how we relate to others, how we relate to the world, now we get to the end of the story with how do we relate to the universe? How do we relate to what, like, how is life created? And then you die and you are reborn and you start the process all over again. So the meanings of the houses do come from the zodiac signs. We could take Aries here and line it up right with house 1, and these houses are ruled by the zodiac signs. So we do find similarities in the things in life and the descriptions that they rule. But generally, when we combine all of this together, We have the nouns. So what is happening in the sentence? What area of our life is being affected? How is that going to look on a person's personality? And then the verbs, the actions of how it's actually going to happen are the planets. And you see here, anything that's in the colored symbols are normal planets that we think of. And then everything else are different asteroids and stars. They rule all these other little smaller areas in life. A lot of astrologers call them like the sprinkles on top, and we can look at some fun things with those too. So let me describe the different planets to you. We start with our first big three: the sun, the moon, and our rising sign. So most of what you hear out in mainstream media, or if you're looking up your daily horoscopes, it's going to be a sun sign horoscope. But unfortunately, what the mainstream doesn't tell you is that you are an extremely unique being, unless someone was born at the exact same time and was given the exact same name as you, and they would have had to have been born in the same exact hospital, because this snapshot comes from location as well. The sky is going to look a little bit different depending where you are in the world. So really no one else can have your chart. So our sun sign, excuse me here, I got little piece of something in my eye. Okay. So our sun sign is how we shine in the world. That is kind of the core of our personality. It's how we shine outward, especially if the sun sits here above what we call the horizon line. For anyone learning astrology, this center line across here rules the horizon. So anything up here is up in the top of the sky during the day. Anything down here is at night. So generally people that have a lot of planets up here are very outwardly expressing, where anything that you've seen down here below the horizon is more an inward expression, something that you're not going to express so much to the outside world. So you have your sun, that's the core of your personality. Your moon rules your emotional self, your inner self. Then you have your rising sign, which this is exactly where the sun line in our horizon sits the moment that you were born. Because the earth spins, right? Not only is it going around the sun, but the earth is also spinning. This sign here changes about every 2 hours, because if this is the pen and it's pointing at Leo, and then it keeps moving, and then it gets to Libra, and then it gets to Capricorn, okay? So it changes every 2 hours. And your rising sign is what some people call your first impression, what people might first think of you. It's also a mask that we can wear. That's not like the core of our being, but it's certainly a big layer of our personality. It can rule oftentimes who we're attracted to. Often you're attracted to someone who has the same rising, or you're friends with someone who has the same rising. And it can show kind of where you feel your comforts too. Like, because I'm a Cancer rising, I love feeling comfortable. Like, I love having my nice bed and sheets, and I love taking baths and nurturing myself at home. So that's something the rising sign rules. Okay, so we've talked about how we shine, how we feel. Mercury, how we communicate. It also rules our mind, our thinking patterns, whether we talk fast or we talk slow, or our thoughts are always ahead of what we're speaking about, or vice versa. So it rules communication, how we speak. Then moving forward, we have Venus, which rules our pleasures in life, what makes us feel comfortable. And again, this is more on a personal level. It does rule love to some degree, but it more rules pleasures, like things that you love, experiences that you love. Think the word pleasure. what makes you feel good. Then we have Mars, that rules action. That's associated with the sign Aries. Mars was a warrior, so it is our drive, our ambition, what drives you in life. How are you going to take action? Are you in a sign that's fast, like Aries, or are you in a slower sign, maybe like Taurus, if your Mars was over there? Then, okay, let me talk about these. We have our north and our south node. This is an imaginary point of where the moon hits this kind of like ecliptic line of the sun, the moon, and earth. So it's an imaginary line, but it's really important in astrology. It changes about every 18 months. And the south node, if you believe in reincarnation, which I do, and if you are studying astrology, that's a pretty big part of looking at astrology. The south node rules what energies we are bringing in from some past life. It is the lessons that we've already learned where we feel really comfortable. These could be innate gifts and abilities. But it's not what you're here to learn. You are here to learn whatever your north node is in. So it's gonna, whatever house it's in, that's the area of life you're gonna have to focus on and learn some lessons in this lifetime. And then that's also associated with the sign that it's in. So it's gonna kind of take on that personality in that area of your life. So for me, for example, it's in my 6th house, which rules my health. It rules the element of service, how you are of service to others, how you are a nurturing figure in a family or a community. So I know for me, especially when Pluto was coming through this house in the mid 2000s, early 2010s, my health was really challenged. I had to learn a lot of health lessons and learn to like be the boss, Capricorn, of my health. So those are the nodes. Then we will look at Saturn. Kronos killed his father. It's funny because we had this series of these 3 deaths between father-child. Saturn was the middle of those. And unfortunately, even though Saturn killed his father to become a better ruler, he kind of ended up as a grouchy Scrooge-esque ruler as well. So Saturn rules limitations. It rules like having to grow up and be an adult in the world. But we don't look at that as a bad thing. And I really don't look at anything as positive or negative. Maybe some of the aspects will be more challenging, and then some aspects that you have are going to be really phenomenal, really easy points of your personality. Because remember, when we put all of this together, it shows your personality, how your mind works, how you speak and communicate. It shows the areas of your life that are going to be really easy and also maybe perhaps a bit more challenging, but there's nothing good or bad because every sign has a flip side. It has the more positive side, the more challenging side. If you have a more challenging aspect, you can consciously try and learn the more positive aspects of that sign, tap into that energy and learn how to embody the more positive aspects. So that's how we can flip something that's more challenging into something that's easier and positive. And we can look and see where in your chart are those areas that when I started getting into astrology, I had a lot of questions about why certain things had happened in my life. I have had incredible experiences in my life thus far, but I've also had fairly extreme experiences on both ends. And they were things that somehow kind of just happened, that I fell into, that I didn't necessarily go after, and then something really bad, like I made the bad thing happen. It just happened around me and was somewhat extreme, not even bad. So I had a lot of questions about why were these things happening in my life? And my astrology chart was able to explain that. So we look at something like Saturn, especially when you turn 28 years old, you have your Saturn return. If you book a return session, what we're looking at is a planet like Saturn or the nodes at 18, or Chiron at 50. When they start here. So Saturn, for example, is about 28 and a half years. And then it keeps going, right? Throughout your life. It keeps moving, and then it gets back here. And when it comes back here, which I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute, like what a chart looks like when I'm moving it. Depending on what else is around, where the other planets are, they're going to be aspecting different and igniting different elements of your chart. Okay, so we have Saturn. Then we get to, let's see, Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter is our expansion energy, how we expand. It rules luck also. And those are the more inner planets. Those are the planets that are visible to us. Then we get to the outer planets, which don't have so much of, they all have a direct impact on our life, but the outer planets rule more generational energies. We can use, again, because this is a science and a way to study cycles of time, we can go back and study generations of people born in different places around the world to see what sort of lessons that generation had to learn. What new things did they bring into the world when that generation came to age, or like at different points throughout their life? So Neptune is our spiritual antenna. It can also show our spiritual gifts, how we channel our clairvoyance, cognizance, clairaudience, that sort of thing. Uranus, this is one of my favorite planets because it is our freedom fighting energy. It shows where you are rebellious in life and you don't know how Uranus is going to affect you. It is always, it's the planet we just don't know what's going to happen. It's always a surprise. It's a gamble. So that one's always exciting to see. And if you have a strong Uranus in your chart, then you probably have very strong, rebellious, like self-driven energies. And then we reach Pluto. This is the furthest out planet. Yes, we still consider Pluto a planet in astrology. And it stays in a sign for about 12, 13 years. So it is going to have a long effect. I really like looking at this planet for whatever house it's in, because that area of your life is going to go through big changes during that whole decade. So I used the example earlier of when Pluto went through my 6th house of health. That whole decade, I dealt with all sorts of interesting health updates is what they ended up being, because now I am someone who doesn't get sick anymore. I'm extremely healthy and fit and active, but I had to learn those lessons through that decade. And the last big one that I look at, especially right now, is Chiron. And what does Chiron look like? It looks like a key, right? So this is Chiron. He was actually like the teacher to a lot of the popular gods and like god warriors like Hercules and Prometheus. And Chiron was an immortal god. He was wounded and he ended up trading his immortality with Prometheus so that he could just die and give his immortality to Prometheus for Prometheus to carry on his work. So Chiron is called the wounded healer. He was a great teacher. He was a great warrior. He was an artist. He was just an all-around incredible, half horse, half man. And this is an area of our life where we have some sort of wound that we have to heal in this lifetime. So this is really important to look at. Have you healed this wound yet? Whatever it is, whatever area of your life and whatever characteristics it takes on. It's a spiritual bridge between different energies, which we'll talk about in our session. It's something that you have to integrate into your life, but can be very challenging depending on the aspects. So let me mention, I've used this word aspects a couple of times. Aspects are what you see here in the middle. This is where the science comes in. An aspect is the amount of degrees separating two planets or elements. So you can see here, I have a big square between Venus and Pluto. The reds are the ones that aren't as comfortable. They're just a little more challenging. You'll have like a push-pull in your personality in that area. Same thing with anything that's opposing and opposition. But then the blue, those are really good. Those are more harmonious aspects of your personality. So for example, I have a nice trine between Chiron and Mercury. I have some sextiles between like all of this Neptune-Uranus energy and my sun, which is nice. So there are more challenging and then more harmonious aspects. So we look at this. I talk about all of your different planets, how all of this works together. And you can ask me, our reading is very conversational. You can ask me questions, kind of what's going on in this area of my life. You know, I've noticed this about myself. Is there a way for me to work with this energy in a better way? Or perhaps I'm not approaching it. And the other aspects that we will look at to answer some of those questions. So we also look at this is called your human design chart. Human design has become pretty popular recently. We look at the type, if you're a generator, a projector, a manifestor, a manifesting generator. This shows you how you need to interact with the universe. If you're a manifestor, you can go in and do whatever the hell you want. You can go and just manifest whatever idea comes to mind. Whereas if you're a generator, you need to wait for an invitation. Once you get that invitation, it's a go. You can go and do. You're someone who has lots of energy. You can go for it. And then there is the projector and the reflector, which I'll explain to you if you are one of those people. It also shows this little guy right over here, this arrow will show if you are a specific manifestor, meaning the more detail that you use when you're writing down, like in your manifestation journal or your intention journal, the more detail you can use about what you want, the quicker it will come, or like the more that you'll get what you want. Whereas a non-specific just needs to write down general details about what they're trying to manifest. And then there's some other things that we look at, your profile type, different motivations. We'll look at like one or two of your gene keys, things like that. So this is really helpful to learn how to get more in flow. That is the goal of doing these sessions, so that you get more in flow with your life. And finally, we also look at your name. I love doing name numerology. For me, it shows so much about a person, and we see what is in our name reflected in our birth chart. So it's really fun to find where those areas match. So we can look at your destiny, your life path up here. We can look at the energy of your expression, and different numbers represent different energies. They can show different vocations, like what careers, what your hobbies are, what your soul came here to learn. This is a big one. things, again, that are more harmonious in your life and less harmonious in your life. So all of these things are really fun to look at. If you have had questions about why certain things are happening in your life, why did they happen at certain times, this is all stuff that we can talk about with astrology. And the last thing is, if you're doing a session with me on like looking ahead or planning, or doing a digging into my past session, then I can show you. So you see here in the middle is my birth chart. And on the outside, this is today, where the planets are right now. So what we do is we look at where the planets were at certain times, how they relate, all of these different angles between the different things. And again, if they are more harmonious or challenging, what area of your life that thing is activating. So we can look at any point in your life and say, oh, yep, that was coming. And you can look ahead. That's what I love using astrology for. You can look ahead and say, yeah, that thing is coming pretty soon. So set up your support systems now so that if there is going to be a more challenging area of life, or if you're going to have, like, if your career house is getting activated, then you can know, okay, for the next year, I can really focus on my career. The planet energies are all supporting me there. This is great. So those are all things that we can look at. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a sense now of what a reading will be like, what all you can get out of it, and what sort of questions you can ask during our session. If you have any other questions, leave a comment below. I would be happy to answer them, and I look forward to meeting you in our session.